Hey guys. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this episode today with Meg from Flourishing Motherhood. Okay, let's go back to like November 2022. And I'm scrolling through my Instagram and I see one of Meg's posts. And it's like it's like going viral so fast. And there's like zillions of comments. Well, I had just downloaded this app that was like Reels repost or whatever, where you could like repost someone's reel to your account. So I like jumped on it because I was like, this is amazing content. Meg's hilarious. I'm going to give a shout out to Flourishing Motherhood and I'm going to post it on my Instagram. Well, it like also goes viral on my page and everyone else's page that then shared it. And it's hilarious. So I want you to like just go hang out on Instagram at Flourishing Motherhood or like TikTok. She's at Flourishing Mother and just go check out some of her. I think she said it was like her second most viral reel. Another one was on the business of being born. Today's episode, we talk all about being an entrepreneur and a content creator and an influencer while being a mom, and then also getting like booted out of the birth center, to a hospital, and then having 2 home births after that experience. So we just talk about a lot. We had a lot of fun, and I'm so excited to share Meg and Flourishing Motherhood with you guys today. All right, let's get to it. What does a contraction feel like? How do I know if I'm in labor? And what does a day of labor look like? Wait, is this normal? Hey, I'm Heidi. My best friends call me Hides. I'm a certified birth doula, host of this podcast, and author of Birth Story, an interactive pregnancy guidebook. I have supported hundreds of women through their labor and deliveries, and I believe every one of them and you deserves a microphone and a stage. So here we are. Listen each week to get answers to these tough questions. Birth Story, where we talk about pregnancy, labor, deliveries, where we tell our stories and share our feelings. And of course, chat about our favorite baby products and motherhood. And because I'm passionate about birth outcomes, you will hear from some of the top experts in labor and delivery. Whether you are pregnant, trying desperately to get pregnant, or you just love a good birth story, I hope you will stick around and be part of this birth story family. So like, let's say you're pregnant. That's why you're listening to the Birth Story podcast and you're preparing for a hospital birth that's upcoming. And of course, this podcast gives you tons of free information, right? But like, do you really understand the stages of labor? How to know when you're in labor? What if you have to have an induction? What about a cesarean section? What about all of the decisions that you have to make once you get to the hospital? So you get there and then they put you in triage. Birth Story Academy walks you through all the things that happen, like that rapid fire with like monitoring and blood work and questions and IV ports and do you want an epidural? I don't know, do you? In Birth Story Academy, we literally break down all of those decisions. Pros, cons, risks, benefits, intuition. And like we get into it. We make birth plans, we do birth visions, we listen to birth affirmations and parenting affirmations. And like at the end of it, like you know exactly what's going to happen when you go into labor and when you get to the hospital. What's going to happen after you give birth, newborn care preferences, how to take care of your baby. I guess what I'm getting at is, if you're not in Birth Story Academy, what's your plan? I want you to come join me in Birth Story Academy and let me walk you through all of the decisions that you have to make if you're having a hospital birth and how to have body autonomy and how to have informed consent and informed refusal. I'm going to teach you and your partner, if you have one, everything that you need to know about birthing in a hospital so that you can walk in that door with some swagger, with some confidence, wash that anxiety away, because you learned everything you needed to learn in Birth Story Academy and you are ready to crush that birth. Okay, let's do it. And let's get to this episode. Hey, Meg, welcome to the Birth Story Podcast. How are you?
Hi, Heidi. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am so good. I'm really excited to dig into like flourishing motherhood and all that you've done with like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and being an influencer and some of my favorite reels. And we're going to talk about your 3 birth stories today and how different it is from like birth center and hospital and then going home for your last 2 births. So thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. It's so funny to hear you call me influencer because I still am not one in my brain, but my numbers are now getting up there. So I guess I am.
Yeah, you're an influencer. And I was like, I influenced you to be here today. So I will take that title too.
100%. 100%.
So Meg, let's tell everybody like a little bit outside of influencer, who you are, like where you're at in the country and kind of what you're doing with your day-to-day life.
Yeah, so I live in coastal Virginia, so near Virginia Beach. I moved out here because my husband was in the Navy, just got out recently, but we are a Navy transplant family, and we just love it here so much because a little bit about me and what I do is I consider myself an urban homesteader. So
Okay.
I have this awesome house that's zoned for chickens. It is urban, so I live in a neighborhood, but I've like used my land to like put like 8 garden beds in it and a ton of fruit trees and blueberry bushes. And so I have actually recently gotten a lot of traction just on social media for urban homesteading, but I also really love to make my own food from scratch. I do a lot with sourdough, and I homeschool 3 kids and create content.
Awesome. Okay. What is going on with sourdough? Like all of a sudden my entire feed is like people making sourdough and I don't really cook that much. So
Dude, I swear 2020, there's something about that year and everyone having to stay at home where everyone became a bread maker to the point where there was like no more flour left, not because of food shortages, because everyone was committed to learning sourdough. And I was one of those people.
yeah. Well, I watch a lot of these videos and it's tremendous amount of work. So maybe you'll sell it someday to the neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to. I have these like dreams of having a real homestead one day and then creating this little like basically farmer's market like in my yard where I could like sell my own milk and cheese and bread and all these things.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so you guys, one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to it's from NPR and it's called How I Built This with Guy Raz. And my absolute favorite episode of this entire podcast is on chicken salad chick. This I can't even remember her name now, but like it was like the most amazing episode ever. But she literally like started making chicken salad in her kitchen and selling it to her neighborhood friends. And then they were like, this is amazing. And like, can you sell it at the school? And then can you sell it, So anyway, you should listen to that episode and see how.
My sister is obsessed with her.
I mean, I'm obsessed with chicken salad chick and the story. Like, I mean, what an amazing business person, right?
So cool.
It is so cool. How did you get into like urban homesteading though? Like if you were kind of the spouse of someone in the Navy and moving around, like where did that interest even get sparked from?
Well, it's funny because I actually grew up, both my parents are city slickers. So my mom's from Detroit, like inner city-ish area. And my dad's from like inner city New York. And neither of them had that kind of lifestyle whatsoever. But I distinctly remember growing up like outside New York City and dreaming about having ducklings and chicks. And I would always save my fruit pits from what I was eating and I would bury them in the property that we lived at in Yonkers. And I would put little like beach toys over them to mark where they were because I was convinced I was going to like grow my own fruit. Yeah. And so I just really feel like it was like a God-given passion since I was a kid. So when I moved into this house in Virginia, there was this giant raised garden bed in the backyard. And the person who lived here before me had planted, it's called edible landscaping. So he landscaped with things that you could actually eat. He had these like rosemary bushes that were rosemary bushes outside the door and by the window so that when you open the window, you could like smell it. And he was a chef. So he had these like just this amazing setup. And I was like, we didn't know that that was there until we basically bought the house. But I was like, oh my gosh, like that kind of kickstarted everything.
Oh, that is so incredible. Oh, what a gift. Do you guys keep in touch?
No, we don't keep in touch with the home. He would be probably horrified at how our yard looks now. But I've just added so many garden beds to it now. I'm like, this is my personality now. So I've like ruined your entire front lawn with garden beds.
Yeah. Before we jumped on, I was telling Meg about how I do like tower gardening with aeroponics because we live so center city, like 0.17. Like you can barely fit our house and our guest house on this tiny plot of land that we have. And so everything is like plugged in on my deck, all these like tower gardens. So I grow the seedlings and then I grow everything in a tower.
Dude, that
That's
is actually like an epic. I like love helping equip people who have really small spaces. I don't know a ton about tower gardening, but I love that you have the option to be able to do that because people often think, well, people often think I can only have a garden if I have land. And that's why like you're an urban gardener. Like
Mhm.
you're growing it, you're doing the
Yeah,
thing.
we do all of our herbs and then we do flowers and we do vegetables. And the joke at our house is like, are we going to get to eat it or are the dog's going to get to it first? So, because
Same with our chickens, yes.
yeah, they really like to go up there. Well, let's start with Flora's birth. Okay. So you're first. And like, I also want to know, like, when did Flourishing Motherhood come into existence? Like, and which child brought you to your blog and your website and your YouTube channel? Like, when you kind of designed and kind of started creating content, was that after all three were born or somewhere in between the three?
Flourishing actually is the meaning of my first daughter's name. So Flora's name means flourishing, and her full name is Florence. And I had her and really just kind of started to do a deep dive into just like holistic, healthy living because kids do that to you. And I started like kind of accruing all this like knowledge and information. And my best friend was like, you really should start a blog or start taking your social media more seriously. And so I used Flora's name for Flourishing Motherhood. And I just wanted to create practical ways for moms to be able to flourish while they're in motherhood. Because I felt like there was this misunderstanding in our culture that once you became a mom, it totally consumed you and zapped any kind of life or hobbies or dreams that you have. Like it zapped them. And I'm like, no, you can like flourish in your motherhood. And I'm experiencing it now and it's amazing. I just want to help everyone else do it.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Some of the most remarkable things that I have done in my life and the most noteworthy were when I had tiny babies and toddlers and when I really didn't think I had time to do anything. But when I set aside time for myself and to like dream and to write, like I made some beautiful things, right? And I really think it's important that as parents that we really share that. Like it is possible. It's going to be really hard, but it is possible to still dream and to still create and to still do and to flourish, as mothers. I think it is so important. So,
100%.
your IG, I know, is Flourishing Motherhood. And so is your YouTube channel, right? And your website, flourishingmotherhood.com. The only
Mhm.
place where we take a diversion is on TikTok, y'all. So it's Flourishing Mother, right?
Yes, flourishing mother because there wasn't enough characters.
I know. Dang TikTok. So you can find Meg at Flourishing Motherhood everywhere. And if you are a TikTok gal, then just go straight over to Flourishing Mother and just stop writing from there. This birth story of yours, you wrote in about it a little bit, and it's wild to me. And so you got pregnant and were planning to birth at a birth center. So talk to me about that, like versus like a naval hospital, let's say, or a regular hospital or a home birth. What brought you to a birth center?
So my husband and I weren't really expecting to have kids, and it was a huge shock to find out we were pregnant. So we had to kind of do a deep dive into what kind. We had never talked birth before, so we had to do a deep dive into what kind of birth we wanted. And I know that we were not leaning towards the hospital because when I was in college, I watched this documentary about the business of being born. And I saw just how this cascade of interventions happens when a lot of times when women walk into the hospital, they kind of lose their autonomy a little bit. And unless you're super duper prepared, and I wasn't, I was just felt like I was being thrown into, an ocean and not knowing how to swim. So I found a birth center nearby and I just figured that would be the best middle ground to have, any kind of help if I needed interventions, but still be able to have a lot of autonomy over my body.
I love the business of being born. This is my 19th year of being a doula. And when I was like a young baby doula and people would hire me, the first thing I would do is I would ship them a DVD. This is like back in the day, but I
Wow.
would like ship them a DVD and I would say like, this is how we're going to start before we do your prenatal visits. Like, I want you to have this data and this education because everything wasn't readily available like on blogs or social media or Instagrams yet. So this was, Ricky Lake kind of
Changed
kicked, she
everything.
changed everything, right? With this documentary. And so you guys, if you haven't seen it, I mean, now I'm sure you can just watch it on Netflix or something. I don't know, but Business of Being Born. How in
Yes,
the
it's on
world,
YouTube.
yeah, how did you find it?
It's so crazy. I was a college student. I think I was 19 and I was on YouTube with my best friend. We were in a dorm and I remember watching it on my laptop in my dorm. And it just it lit something in me because I was kind of studying to be pre-med. I have my background is health science. That's the degree I was getting. And that was kind of the first time I realized how insurance companies work with our health and wellness and how things aren't always how they seem.
It is insane to me. I encapsulate my clients' placentas and that want them to have be encapsulated. And even if they don't, I'm like, well, just let me bring it home and you can like plant it in your garden with a tree or, some sort of like fruiting something. And they're like, okay, well, why wouldn't we just throw it away? And I'm like, because they're going to charge you $900 to dispose of your placenta and then like
Insane.
another $600 to send it to pathology. So if you really break down your insurance company's bill, like just when it comes to your placenta, like if you don't do anything with it, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And then you're paying probably 10 or 20% or part of your deductible towards that. And so I'm like, just let me encapsulate your placenta. It's like 300 bucks,
100%. Oh, yeah.
Or let me bring it home and just bury it, right? If you're hopefully your dogs won't dig it up. But so you found your way to YouTube and you found your way to this documentary and then eventually to this birth center. And you said it was an unexpected pregnancy. So how did your pregnancy go? Like, were you relatively healthy?
No, no, it was, prior to my pregnancy, I actually just had major surgery. So I had something called a laparotomy where they cut me from my belly button down to my pubic bone because I had a massive tumor growing on my right ovary. So I went from almost having a partial hysterectomy to getting pregnant 4 months later, which was just insane to everyone. Then after I got pregnant, had hyperemesis, so I had HG, and I was just blindsided. Like I think I started throwing up when I was 5 weeks pregnant, and I stopped throwing up when I was 35 weeks. So for 30 straight weeks, I was just insanely sick, and I took all the meds for being like a crunchy mom who is kind of tries to do things her own way. I was like, give me the Zofran, give me the Diclegis, like anything that will help me survive this pregnancy.
So the question I have for you is, did it help?
It took the edge off of it. I remember being 30 weeks and I tried getting off of the meds because I just figured I think I'm far enough along now. And I remember throwing up the whole day. So I definitely think it took the edge off of being sick, but I 100% felt like I had the flu 24/7, regardless of if I was vomiting or not. I just felt awful.
Yeah. Okay, now I know where this story ends. So this is where I'm starting to get confused because I guess this is a great question. If you're so sick and you are vomiting every day, how are you getting proper nutrition in?
Yeah. So that's something that, me and my midwives talked about a lot because I was gaining weight and they had me I was gaining weight pretty rapidly. They had me keep a food journal to like see the different kinds of things I was eating. But the only thing that really helped with my insane nausea was like snacking. I would just snack all the time. And even though I would lose it, I would end up losing it at one point in the day or at 3 points in the day, whenever it happened. The only things that I could really eat and keep down was like, crackers and fruit and like basically carbs. Like I tried to eat protein, but my body was like, "Arr." So I just, yeah, I ate a lot of carbs. And my midwife explained that your body actually absorbs a lot of food within the first 15 to 30 minutes of eating. Your body absorbs like a lot of the calories and a lot of the nutrients. But like the longer it sat in my stomach, the more I would get. So I would throw up the food, but I would still gain the weight.
Wow. Okay. Was that surprising to you?
It was surprising. It was disappointing because I guess I felt powerless because I didn't feel like I had control of what my body would let me eat.
Mhm.
And I felt like I couldn't control the weight gain that my midwives really wanted me to control because I was just like, I'm doing the best I can. You could read my food journals. Like I'm trying to eat protein. It doesn't sit well with me. Like I'm snacking, but like you don't want me to gain weight. So I'm trying not to snack. But when I don't snack, I like throw up more. It was just, I felt so out of control.
Yeah. Did they at the birth center do tests for like gestational diabetes?
Yeah, which I thought for sure I had gestational diabetes, and I didn't. Not any of my pregnancies did I have that.
Yeah, I think I knew you were going to say no, and the reason that I asked you that is because I think it's really, really important for listeners to hear. Like a lot of people will get gestational diabetes and then they'll like blame it on themselves, right? And I'm like, no, listen to Meg right here. She's throwing up. She's just eating carbs. No gestational diabetes, right?
Yeah,
Like this really, really, really has a lot to do with genetics. It has a lot to do with your placenta. It has to do with like risk factors later on in life. It has very little to do with, well, I'm just sitting around eating carbs in the middle of my pregnancy. So
right.
I think what we need to focus on more, and that's why I'd asked a question around nutrition, right? Like it's how do we get the proper nutrition in? And so even though you were throwing up, you were gaining weight, you were getting carbs in. Do you think you were getting enough like fruits and vegetables in though?
I was. I did a lot of. Really craved mangoes in particular. I ate probably a mango every single day,
Hmm.
and really crunchy salads. So I was eating those like bagged salads. I was working full time at when I was pregnant the first time, and I would get those like bagged salad mixes, and I would just make them at my desk and like devour the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, see, those are really good tips though. There is something about mangoes. I haven't researched it in a long time, but that is a very normal pregnancy craving. So
Oh
I'm
wow.
just not remembering what's in mangoes, but there's a lot of people that just like are like, I never really ate a lot of mangoes and then devoured mangoes and mango smoothies and mango juice like the whole time they're pregnant. So maybe by the time I publish your episode, Meg, I will have put it in the show notes. Who knows? um, so your midwives were on you about this weight gain. Was it possible for you to decline weight checks?
No, no, they were for my very first appointment with them, they were very much on my weight. And yeah, there was no way to decline the weight test. I actually talked to them previously, like when I first became a client of theirs, because I have a history with eating disorders. And so I told them, I was like, this is like it's really triggering that I'm vomiting all the time because it's just bringing back memories I don't love.
Mm-hmm.
And be like this whole like me gaining weight, I'm already so stressed about it. Like, is there any way that we can be kind of sensitive around this topic? But that to be really frank, they just didn't really care. They were like, no, like this is how we do it. Bring your food journal, write everything down that you eat. We're going to review it with you. And if you gain more than what we're recommending, then you just can't deliver here. They were very like cut and dry.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I also recovered from disordered eating, as many of our listeners have too. And it is very triggering, especially with food tracking, especially with
Oh yeah.
nausea and vomiting, weight gain, embracing like a growing body and curves. It can be really, really challenging in pregnancy. So, for those of you listening, like, hey, two of us right here in solidarity with you. And even if they don't allow it, like Meg said, right? I still encourage everyone to at least ask, can I not be weighed? Can I stand backwards? Could you not say the number? I absolutely cannot share with you a food journal or document that. But where they get you, right? You can say a lot of those things in a hospital birth, right? And get away with it because there's nowhere they can kick you out to, right? They have to serve you. You can refuse everything at a hospital, right? You can be like, nope, I'm going to eat no IV port. You're not going to weigh me. I'm not going to turn in my food journal. I'm not going to do the diabetes test. You can literally say no to everything. You can be the highest risk, whatever, and they still have to take care of you. But at a birth center, they don't, right? They can say, sorry, if you're not going to play by our rules, then we're going to send you to the hospital. So what ended up happening at the end of your pregnancy?
So I went in for my 40-week check, and I had gained the rule was I could only gain 50 pounds based off my BMI. So when I went in for that check, I was 51 pounds. And I thought, surely, like, they're not gonna actually kick me out. But my midwife, one of the midwives there, was like, thought about it for a second, and she said, listen, I'm gonna give you 2 days to lose this pound. And if you come back in 2 days and the pound is gone, I'm going to let you stay. But if you come in and you have either gained any more weight or you're the same weight, we are risking you out and you have to deliver in the hospital.
Oh, that's such an unsafe conversation for someone with a history of disordered eating.
Right. So I literally left there and I was like, I have to starve myself and take laxatives and cut my hair and wear a bikini into the office next time, even though it was February, because I am not willing to give up my plan. And I want to deliver here. You guys are my midwives. Like, I have everything. I've done all the classes. I just did everything I possibly could. I was like, I'm not giving this up. So that's what I did. I just didn't eat anything, didn't drink anything that morning. I was just trying to do anything to decrease my weight. And I wore this little tiny maternity dress in there with biker shorts on. And I lost the 1.5 pounds. And then they said we were going to do a non-stress test on you. And they did this. Yeah, they did a non-stress test. And they're like, oh, your fluids are really low. We're going to induce you anyway.
Couldn't they have done that the day before?
Yeah. Yep. So, I was just like, oh, so my fluids are low. That's not shocking because I haven't had anything to drink and I've had anything to eat in the last few days. So it just kind of felt like, I don't know if this is true. This could just be my own insecurities, but it kind of felt like they were relieved to not have me there. And they're like, oh, well, now we have something we can risk you out of.
Oh, that breaks my heart for you, Meg. It really does. But also a critical piece of your next stories, right? So,
oh, yeah, 100%.
But I do want you to tell Flora's birth story, though.
Yeah.
So what Meg's talking about, you guys, is AFI, amniotic fluid index, and you get it when you're doing a BPP, a biophysical profile, and an ultrasound, and there's 4 little pockets, and they're measuring those pockets. And based on what gestation you are, the amniotic fluid levels are somewhere between let's say 12 and 26 centimeters. Okay. Well, as you go on in gestation, that goes down. So if you have 26 centimeters of fluid at 40 weeks, that means that you have excess fluid. If you have only 6 or 8 centimeters of fluid, that would mean that you would have low amniotic fluid. And these terms are polyhydramniosis and oligodramniosis, all these fancy words. So what they were saying is Meg, you have low amniotic fluid. What gestation were you?
I think I was 40 weeks and 3 days.
Okay. Do you happen to remember what your AFI was?
No clue.
No. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you it was probably less than 6. Okay. But
okay.
That makes sense. That would be probably 8 or 6 or below would be probably the number that they would risk you out of. And that is absolutely possible, you guys, because Meg was dehydrated. So the more hydrated you are, the more amniotic fluid you make, the more your baby pees and makes more amniotic fluid, And so one of the things is to make sure that when you go in for these ultrasounds that you are very well hydrated, which Meg wasn't able to do, right? They kind of backed you up against I know they just backed you up against a wall.
Like,
So
how do you lose weight? Like when you're that pregnant in 2 days, like I couldn't even now, if you told me I had to lose a pound by tomorrow, I'd be like, you know what I mean?
right. Like you said, laxatives.
Right. Yeah. I was like, I mean, I have really long hair. I almost cut all of my hair off. I was like, that at least has to be half a pound.
So, it's so crazy. I'm sorry that that happened to you. So they just sent you over to the hospital then?
Yeah. So they said, go home, have a really good meal. Thank God, because I was starving, and
And
pack
drink
up your
some
hospital
water.
bag. Yeah, I was just chugging water when I left there, and I got my hospital bag ready, and my husband and I had a really nice dinner, and then we checked into the hospital, and I just had to. It was actually really sweet. I think I was disassociating in that moment because my disappointment and my shame was so high that I had just gotten risked out and I had failed the process, and I didn't want to deal with it. And so I remember getting checked into my hospital room, and I was just staring at a wall, and I look over and my husband is like wiping tears away from his own eyes. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" And he just was like, I'm so sorry because I know that this is what you wanted and you did everything you could. And I just feel for you." It was like he just had like sheer empathy for me in that moment.
Mhm.
And it was so healing because I felt like my whole pregnancy, there was no empathy. There was just no empathy. And so to have someone like crying my tears for me, I feel like I was able to just grieve my birth in that moment and be like, this isn't how it was supposed to be. But also, like, I just felt so grateful that I had the partner that I had. And I was like, we can do this. We'll do it their way. But, we can do this and we're going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, you were seen and you were heard by at least one person, and that can make
Right.
all the difference in the world, whether that's your partner or an amazing labor and delivery nurse or a doula or a friend. Like, but really, you just need that one person to say, like, Meg, I see all the hard work. I see all the times you threw up. I see the sacrifices that you made to grow this baby. Like, you know, oh, I
Oh,
think
yeah. To have one person be empathetic, but like the most important person in my eyes, is just, it was what I needed to start the process because that process was, yeah, pretty intense.
yeah. And at that point, you're being asked to drive yourself into your mammalian state for primal birthing. That's hard to do. And just like they are like, snap our fingers and get induced. And like, and you're supposed to just switch your brain into like mammalian self, you know? And that's
Right.
hard to do. So, when we start an induction, they typically will do a vaginal exam and tell you if your cervix is very ripe or if you need cervical ripening. Did they start you with cervical ripening or did they go straight to Pitocin?
Yeah, so the night before they checked me, I was like not dilated at all. I was not effaced at all. My body was not even close. So she offered to do a cervix swipe. So I got my cervix swiped, and then right after they inserted a cervical balloon, which was excruciating. And after she was done, I remember her looking at me and saying, "I don't think I'm ever going to do a cervix swipe and a cervical balloon back to back. I think this was a bad idea," because I was like arching off the bed when they were putting that balloon in.
Yeah.
And the point is to leave the balloon in overnight and hopefully like help dilate me. Which she's like, it'll probably fall out overnight because you'll dilate. But I woke up the next morning with it still in because I think I had only dilated like 1 centimeter.
Okay. It depends on how much they fill the balloon. It's called a Cook catheter and has a balloon on the top part of your cervix and then a balloon on the bottom part of your cervix. And it puts pressure both ways on your cervix to efface it, to thin it, and then to open. But depending on how much fluid they put in there, it will typically fall out when you're 4 to 6 centimeters dilated. So it
Ah,
can stretch you to 4 to 6, but if your body's not releasing a lot of prostaglandins, if your body's not ready, then your cervix is like No.
No.
Also for you guys listening, if you've ever had a LEAP procedure or any cervical biopsies or a previous abortion, D&C, D&E, anything, a cerclage where we've gone near the cervix, it is possible to have scar tissue on the cervix because the cervix does not regenerate. And so if you have scar tissue on the cervix, sometimes it takes, like, the balloon doesn't want to break up that scar tissue. And so that can happen too. So you wake up in the morning and you're like, shit, hey, balloon, still
Yep.
here. So,
Oh, yeah.
and they don't want to keep it in more than 12 hours typically because of it could lots of different risks, right? Irritating the cervix, swelling the cervix, breaking the water, infection, just all different things. So did they go ahead and drain it and take it out?
They
Yeah.
drained it, they took it out, and then they started a Pitocin drip.
Okay. Oh, surprising. But this was also 8 years ago, right? Medicine
Yes,
changes
this was
quickly.
this is 7 years ago.
7 years ago. I was like, listen, medicine changes very quickly. At what I would say a failed Cook catheter, if any of you guys want to speak up and advocate for yourself, you could ask for Cervidil or Cytotec, which are prostaglandins that are additional cervical ripening agents, and then do one of those things with like maybe some breast pumping and see if that happens. But honestly, the most effective way to induce someone of the tools that we have is typically Pitocin. So they just started it.
Yeah, they were kind of gracious to me in the sense of they said, we're going to start you off really low and we're not going to like just flood you with this and we're going to bump you up as you go. So I can't remember what the units were, but they started low, I think at around like 6:30 in the morning. And by the time it was noon, my doula arrived and I like really needed like help getting through the contractions. So I do remember twice they had to stop the Pitocin for certain reasons. I think one time the needle infiltrated and it was like going right into my tissue. And
Oh,
so, but once
no.
yeah, it was so gnarly. But once they stopped the Pitocin, my body would stop laboring. Like I would like full on just go back to like normal life. And that was so bizarre to me that I almost felt like they were plugging my contractions in.
Yeah. So I often will tell people, Meg, that there's an induction and then there's augmentation. So sometimes we use Pitocin, not sometimes, we use Pitocin to induce, but at some point your body will catch up and your body will start laboring. And at some point an induction does become an augmentation. And some people will then turn off the Pitocin and their contractions will keep going. I actually think that like that was probably like a good check-in for you. Like, okay, my body isn't doing this right now in this moment. And then they start the
Oh yeah.
Pitocin over. How frustrating though for you.
Yeah. I just didn't really know how long I was, my really like didn't want to get an epidural. So I just was like trying to cope, which of course, you know, as a doula, like trying to cope with Pitocin contractions are just insane. And by the time I think it was 6 p.m. or 5:30, my blood pressure was so high. They kept just, no, I don't know, threatening. They were threatening me at this point. They were like, if you do not get your blood pressure down, we're going to have to start talking about C-sections. So I think that your best bet is to get an epidural right now so that you could potentially decrease your blood pressure because it was so high. They were like, you're risking yourself to have a stroke.
Yeah. And that is very true. Pain increases our blood pressure. If your blood pressure was increasing that much, it also tells me that you probably had gestational hypertension or were borderline preeclamptic because, like, does that make sense? Like, pain is only going to
Yeah.
increase your blood pressure so much, but like increasing it, like, I just don't want people listening to think like, oh gosh, if I'm in pain, I could have a stroke or C-section. You could if your blood pressure goes so high, but we only get to those really dangerous levels when there's more of an underlying cause with the pain, right?
Right.
So did they ever talk to you about preeclampsia or gestational hypertension?
No, they never brought that up. They just brought up either going on magnesium or getting an epidural because it was around when I was having the contractions that my blood pressure would shoot up, but it never got over 200, which is good.
Yeah.
But it was trending up. So they're just like, you need to get a game plan together
Yeah.
on how you're going to bring it back. Because they kept saying, try to bring down your blood pressure. I'm like, how do I try to do that? They're trying to get me to like relax, like in bed, like while on a ball on Pitocin. And I was like, I'm sorry, it's not working. This is not working. I can't relax any more than I'm trying to relax right now.
You're right. It's like, well, the only way I can accomplish this is if you turn off that damn Pitocin and let me go home. Then my blood
Right.
pressure will come down. So, and Meg's totally right, you guys. An epidural does drop your blood pressure and it does take away the sharp pains so that you can more easily relax, right? As Meg learned in the business of being born, though, it often can lead to these cascade of interventions. One intervention can lead to another intervention. But sometimes it's just one. But right now, Meg, here we are. One intervention to the induction, to the Cook catheter, to the Pitocin, to the, and now the blood pressure. So you're already starting to see in real life, in your own experience, what the reality of what was happening too. So what did you choose to do?
So I asked them when they started saying like, all right, I remember that I had one contraction or one blood pressure reading where I was getting close to 200, and they could just tell they were like, yo, like you got to figure something out. So I was like, all right, well, check my cervix. Like, let's see how far I'm dilated. And I'll never forget that poor nurse. I can't remember who checked me, but I remember her being like, you're almost a 5. And I was just like gutted. I was like, forget it. I was like, I remember walking, I walked from there into the bathroom. I had one more contraction in the bathroom. And then I walked out and I was like, listen, don't try to talk me out of this. I was talking to my husband. Don't say a single word to me, but yes, I'm getting an epidural. I know I've told you to try to talk me out of it, but don't say another word besides getting that anesthesiologist and giving me an epidural right now, because this is not worth it.
Yes. Oh, and it's really true. Like sometimes people will have a code word or something, but like your partner knows when you like, I'll often defer to the partners. I'll say like, is she serious? And they're like, oh yeah, she's serious, you know? So what'd you think about the epidural?
Yeah, the epidural. I mean, my anesthesiologist had a hard time getting it in. That was that kind of actually surprised me, because my husband was like, "That was the worst part of your whole birth, was watching you get an epidural," because he kept he's like, let me know what side, let me know if you feel anything in each side. I'm like, my left side, my right side. Like he kept, and then he got like blood in the catheter, and he had to pull it out and like do it all over again. So the process of getting an epidural wasn't smooth sailing. But once it actually got into my system, oh my gosh, instantly was not in pain anymore. I was like, just returned to my normal self, talking to my best friend, talking to my doula, my husband, took a nap, woke up from my nap. And yeah, I had like basically dilated the rest of the way within just like a few hours.
And that's the beauty sometimes of the epidural right there. When it works so well, right? But it does
Oh my
remove
gosh.
you from some of the experience. But the fact that you were able to take a nap and rest your pelvic floor, and I'm assuming your blood pressure came way down when the pain went away, and the epidural naturally just drops your blood pressure. Okay, so they are like, did you feel pressure? Did they just check you and tell you it's time to push? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so you're right. My blood pressure went way down. And I woke up from a nap. This was probably around like 9:30 or 10. Woke up from my nap, and I kind of had like the shakes, and I kind of felt like a little bit nauseous. And I was like, ooh, I think this is like signs of transition. I think I might be transitioning right now. So whenever, I don't remember when we got checked, but probably like 45 minutes later, they came in and they checked me. They're like, oh yeah, you're 10 centimeters dilated. You're ready to push if you want to start, which was like so bizarre to me to think that, because I had prepared mentally for a natural birth. I was like, it's so weird to be told like, oh yeah, you could like push your baby out now. And I was like, really? Like that's how it works? Like I just start pushing and then I'm a mom? Like this is so weird.
But you are so right, Meg. You were in transition. Um, when we have an epidural, it sometimes takes our brain out of the equation, right? We're like, oh, I'm going to chat with my friends. I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to do this. But when you start shaking and you feel nauseous and you feel pressure again, and there's or hot and cold flashes too, like, yeah, your body is physically going through transition, even if you're like your brain might not be totally connected to that experience with an epidural. But you nailed it when you called it. So as a doula, I prefer my clients start pushing when the baby's really, really low, like 10 plus 1 plus 2. Were you like, okay, I am ready to push. I want to do this? Or did you want to take a nap and wait a little longer?
Looking back, I wish I would have waited longer. I wish I would have like let my body kind of labor the baby down more. But I didn't. When they said that, I kind of like felt excited. And so I was like, yeah, like let's start pushing.
Yeah.
And it was, and you know this, it was, I was not what I couldn't feel where to push. So I was pushing into my head and not into my bottom. And I had just totally botched like the first 30 minutes. I don't think I was effective at all until I was able to reframe what pushing was.
How did you reframe?
So they told me to push like I was pooping,
Okay.
which was like, if you know me, like I'm so conservative when it comes to things like that. Like I do, my husband and I are like, we don't even like pass gas in front of each other. And so the nurse was like, push like you're pooping. And my husband, like just everything that he was doing was repeating whatever the nurses and the doula were saying. So he's like, push like you're pooping. And then I just remember looking at him and we both like kind of giggled. And then I was like, okay, I think I can do that. I think I know, because you're numbed, right? So I had the little presser thing to kind of ease off the epidural if I wanted to. And so I was starting to get a little bit feeling back. And so, yeah, I started pushing into my bottom, and then I could hear the room, like the energy change. We're like, good. And they were like saying good instead of, all right, and that made me feel really good to finally be like, oh, am I pushing the right, are things happening? Because I think a lot of women in labor, I've just heard this with my friends who are also in labor when I've been their birth support, as they're like, nothing's happening, is it? Like nothing's going on down there. But they were like, no, it is. Like it's working. Like I can see your head, and each push was just like, I just gained more and more momentum, and it just got really exciting.
Yeah. I think when you like finally find your push, it is like, oh yeah. And I mean, I'm even guilty of that as the doula, like changing my tone. Like, okay, great work. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, go. Like, because it
Yes.
is exciting when you start to see the head emerging. Meg, I was totally like you with my first. I had an epidural with my first and unmedicated with my second. And on my first, I remember they were like, okay, well, you're 10, you can push or you can like take a nap. And I was like, wait, you just told me I can push my baby out. Like taking a nap is like not an option. And I probably pushed for like 4.5 hours or something ridiculous because I was so excited. I was like, well, I'd rather just like be doing something to like meet my baby than just like taking a nap. Once they told me it was go time, I was like, no way, let's just do this. How long do you
Game.
think you pushed for?
I think I pushed for an hour and a half. So
Okay.
and of course, like when you're pushing, I don't know, to me, time was flying. I felt like I pushed for 30 minutes, but I think I pushed for about an hour and a half.
Yeah. Well, that's a relatively short period of time to push for a first time. You're going into this, you've never pushed before, and you have an epidural. Like that's like, I'd say on average, it's probably like 2 hours. So, and
Yeah, I was actually impressed too. I could not believe that, like, I couldn't believe how quick that whole process was.
yeah. Did she emerge like pretty easily? Like, did you have any tearing? Like, how did the actual delivery go?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love birth so much. Even with, having to grieve what I wanted, it was so incredible. I remember like it was yesterday, her head coming out and like feeling her slide out of me. I did tear. I think I had like almost a second-degree tear. So I needed quite a bit of stitches, but she delivered so well. And I just like will never forget that feeling of when they put her on my chest and like touching her for the first time,
Mhm.
like cupping her little slimy butt, which she meconium pooped in like seconds later. But yeah, she was perfect. I mean, she came out just perfect. And they had to do a little bit of stitching on me, which ended up being, I think, more the tearing wasn't that painful. The recovery was more painful for the stitches. But yeah, she came out just great.
I like echo what you just said about that moment, right? Like, I don't think there's like a drug or a drink or an experience. Like, I don't think there's anything in this world that can match the euphoria of holding your baby on your chest, like after all that hard work, too, you know?
Oh my
And
gosh.
I mean hard work, like, even if you had a C-section, like, hard work of pregnancy, of, like, growing a human, and then they just put them on you for the first time. It's like, you
Oh my
just can't
gosh.
describe it.
I know. I'm just like covered in goosebumps right now. There's just nothing like it. And like, there's just nothing like meeting such like an influential person for the first time. You like your babies influence you, I feel like more than anyone else in the entire planet. And to like meet your baby for the first time, each one, I just so distinctly remember being like telling them out loud, like, I'm your mom. Like, I'm your mom. Like, I get to meet you. It was so surreal.
Yeah. Mine's on video, and I think I say hi like 1,000 times. I'm like,
Yes, same,
"Hi,
same.
hi. Oh my god, hey, buddy." It's like,
Yes.
I
Oh, it's the
mean,
sweetest.
I just like they say the best first date ever, you know? So,
Yes.
did you encapsulate your placenta, ingest it, plant it? Did you do anything with it?
I did with my last birth, but no, with Flora, I didn't. I didn't do anything with hers. We were so budget conscious
Yeah.
then that I just couldn't like bring that into our budget. But I wish I would have.
Yeah. Well, you're a homesteader now. So in like a quick 15-minute phone call, I could teach you how to do it for people in your
Oh,
area.
yes.
I was like, I do them in my kitchen with my mom, and it's so fun and it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it too. So we can always have that conversation if you would like
Yeah. I'm
to
getting a
talk
freeze
about it.
dryer soon, so I could freeze dry
Oh
my own placenta next time.
yeah. You know what? Like there's a whole movement on freeze-dried milk. Breast milk? Have you seen this?
I have, and I am like so excited. My best friend's about to have her baby in a few weeks, and I'm going to be freeze drying so much breast milk.
Yeah. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going down these like Instagram reels of freeze-dried breast milk right now, you guys. Just look up the hashtag, you know?" So, you have this beautiful birth, even though it's completely opposite of what you envisioned and what you dreamed and all of that kind of stuff. And then you get pregnant again.
Oh yeah.
So, how did things change for you for your second pregnancy?
Getting pregnant again, amazing. I'm just so blessed that that just has never been a struggle for us. And I had HG again, but this time around, I felt like I was more prepared than the last. So um, the vomiting only lasted until about 25 weeks, which was just a huge, or 26 probably, but it was just much better than the last time because it was only half my pregnancy that I was that miserable. But I knew from the get go, I was like, I'm not going to be doing that birth center again. No way. I would actually rather do a hospital birth than go back to that birth center. But I found a midwife. There was a brand new certified nurse midwife that my insurance company, TRICARE, because I was under, military insurance, they covered it or they reimbursed most of it. And so then I was like, all right, like if my insurance can cover most of this and I vibe with her, I just want to check her out and see what's going on and see if I can be eligible for a home birth. And she feels like a family member at this point. She was amazing. And I remember on our very first appointment, just feeling so confident in the ability to birth at home. My husband was very on board. Every single question we asked her, she was so prepared for. And we had an amazing experience with her. She delivered my first and my second, and she was just incredible.
Were you in this house that you live in now?
Yes, right in front of me,
Oh.
right in front of where I'm sitting is where we had both of my other two babies.
Oh, I love it. You guys, I know those of you listening aren't looking at Meg right now, but I just love when I'm interviewing someone and I'm like right there in this space. That's where like the magic happened, you know? Were your midwifery appointments done in your home?
Some of them, the later ones, when I was I think 34 weeks and beyond, were done in my home. But I drove out to her. She had a little office that I would drive out to. for my appointments. And she had like a little kiddie area where like my firstborn could play. And it was just really sweet, sweet times.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about the weight gain. Did she make you weigh or did she say, no, I don't care about that?
She did make me weigh, but she would let me weigh myself and just report back with a number. And I warned her about my birth with my first baby and how I gained a lot of weight even when I was really sick. And she said, she just was like, I'm not going to risk you out unless I think that you are better off delivering in a hospital than here. So your weight is not going to be as much of a factor as it was at the birth center. She's like, unless I feel like you really like need to be at the hospital, I'm not going to risk you out. So she gave me just a lot of peace of mind because, naturally I went in very skeptical being like, listen, how permanent are you going to be in my birth?
Right. If I'm,
And I did gain I gained probably 55 pounds when I delivered Clementine, and she was fine. She's like, I can tell that you're healthy and that you're safe, and it's not gonna be an issue.
my sister and I have a joke that it's called our delivery weight, right? So like for both of hers, she weighed the exact same amount that I weighed and also like basically all four of our babies. We weighed the exact same amount on the day we went into delivery. It was like crazy. And I joke whenever anybody tells me they gained 50 pounds, I gained 72 pounds. And
Yeah, honestly, I probably gained more like that with my first, but I was just so dehydrated that it didn't register.
so I probably started out my pregnancies, like for me, maybe a little underweight. And then I like just really took off. I really enjoyed eating in both of my pregnancies.
Same.
Lots of Dairy Queen. I mean, oh, it was for me after a history of disordered eating, I really enjoyed letting go and actually like I enjoyed gaining weight and like being like having a reason and excuse to be like,
Yes,
look
feeling
at
like you're
these.
allowed to.
Yeah, I was like, look at these boobs like I'd never had before. Like this is great. So in my opinion, as a doula who's seen 1,500 deliveries in 20 years, I believe 55 pounds is a very healthy amount of weight to gain as long as the focus is on, like we talked about nutrition, right? Are you getting in those mangoes? Are you getting in spinach? Are you getting in the proper nutrition? And if you are, then you guys, I really just don't want you to get hung up on the weight number, you know? And
Oh yeah.
this birth story is just a testament to that, right? Your midwife saying to you, Meg, you're healthy. I'm not worried about it. Um, did she have an assistant or did you have your doula again? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, she had a birth assistant. Her name's Deborah, and she was amazing. And I had my best friend at the time was there for me as kind of like an unofficial doula, and my mom. So my mom and my best friend were there for both my births.
Wow. Okay. And then I know your husband was there and was Flora involved?
Flora wasn't in. Actually, none of my kids were involved in any of my births. But I also had a birth photographer, and she's like one of my best friends, and so she was there almost all my births. So I guess I, technically speaking, had kind of a big birth team, but it didn't feel big when I was delivering. It felt really small and tight.
Yeah. So tell me about the birth. How did you know you were in labor?
Oh man. Okay. So I went to like 41 weeks with Clementine, and my midwife asked me if she wanted me to swipe my cervix. And I said yes. And she swiped my cervix. And the next day I kind of was like cramping all night. But I didn't know what natural labor felt like. I didn't know what going into labor felt like. So I was definitely like in denial. And I had actually a big Bible study over that night. And I'm on my birthing ball and I'm like, doing the Bible study. And um they started like looking at me funny. And I realized that like I kind of was like, I guess, taking pauses or breaths or making funny faces. And without saying anything, the men in my Bible study like started like picking up my coffee table and like moving it out of my room and like clearing out like the kids' toys that was out there. And I'm like, no, guys, I'm not like, this is not the real thing. And they're like, okay, but we're just going to clear out your living room just in case it is. But like everyone else apparently knew that I was in labor. And I was just like, no, act normal. We're just hanging out and fellowshipping. No big deal.
Oh my gosh, I
And
love it.
I know. It's so funny, like, looking back, being like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I was." Because the funny thing with labor, right, is, like, it's not linear. So, I was kind of having these contractions. I got a full night of sleep, and I was woken up at, like, 4:30 with this, like, massive contraction, and then I, like, went back to sleep, and then I was woken up, like, maybe 2 hours later with, like, a big contraction, and then I didn't contract probably for, like, 4 hours after I woke up, and I thought I was so defeated because I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is prodromal labor, like, I am not actually in labor." But something switched about 4 hours later, and then my contractions started just coming back to back, and I was like, "Oh, I think it's happening." Like, that's when I finally accepted it. I was like, "Oh, I think I'm actually gonna have a baby today."
Yeah, but it sounds like for at least 12 hours, your body was just kind of like slowly kind of just getting warmed up, getting ready for
Yes.
it. When did you call everybody? Like, when were you like, okay, birth photographer, midwife, best friend? Like, when were you like, okay, I think I need people here?
Yes. So I think, let's see, I think it was around noon that I realized, like, oh, I'm actually, like, in labor right now. And by 2, I had called, like, my birth team. I called the babysitter to come and pick up my daughter. And actually my both of my home births were almost identical in story, except for my second home birth. I drank castor oil to induce labor, and because the cervix stripping wasn't working. But for both of them, I had 4-hour labors, and I called my people about 2 hours in, and I think even both times I told my midwife. My birth photographer came over because she's one of my best friends, and, like, my other best friend was there, my mom was already there, but I told my midwife, like, "Don't come yet," because I just assumed it's gonna be a lot longer, and both times my midwife said, "Okay," and then left and came over anyway.
Oh, she's a good midwife. She's really
She
good
is she's the
because
best, yeah.
it's easier to come and assess and leave than like miss it, essentially, you
Yes,
know?
100%.
Yeah.
And she was so, oh my gosh, she just is, like, the best. So she came over when I was in my, second home birth, and, I was like, "Oh, Cindy, like, no, I'm not that far along, like, you're gonna be so bored." And she's like, "Oh, it's a gorgeous day, I'm gonna go for a walk, like, I brought some lunch, like, you just stay here in labor and don't even worry about me." And so she just, like, fully convinced me that she was just having the time of her life and that I did her a favor. And that was so good for my personality, being like a people pleaser, because even in labor, I'm like, "What am I gonna do? Like, your day is ruined because of me." And she just sat outside of my porch, and within an hour, I was, like, hitting transition, and she just popped right back in, and she was like, "I knew you were getting close." She's like, "You didn't know it, but I knew it."
Yeah. And it's a lot of things of like the intuition of a midwife, and they're listening to your sounds and they're looking at the shape of your body and the shape of your belly. It's just a different training than like, let's say like a hospital OBGYN, right? So
100%, yes.
her intuition was so beautiful. I want to finish up Clementine's birth, but I want to
Oh,
jump to
yes.
Theo real quick. So you said essentially it was like very similar. What gestation were you with Theo, your third?
I was, like, 42 weeks. I
Oh,
think I
so
was a
you
day from
you
being
just kept
42
getting
weeks.
more pregnant as your pregnancies went on. Like,
I
right.
have, like, the gestation of an elephant. Like, I've never just gone into spontaneous labor. That's never happened to me.
So they were doing like the membrane sweeps and then and the cervical massages, and then that didn't work. So then you're like, give me the castor oil.
Dude, yes, I was having so much sex. There was so much nipple stimulation. We were doing all of our homework. Like, I was doing everything I could possibly do. And, like, I not only was I not going to labor, but I felt like I could do jumping jacks. I was still walking 3 to 5 miles a day. I was squatting, like, I felt no pressure. I just felt great. My 3rd pregnancy in particular was just great. So this is kind of a little bit shisty of me. I feel a little bit bad, but I asked my midwife at 41 weeks, "Can I drink castor oil and get this going?" Um, and she was like, "No, I don't think you should do that yet. I think you should wait. We'll do some other things." But I was getting nervous because, yeah, I know that she doesn't go past this. My certified nurse midwife doesn't go past 42 weeks. So I was starting to get nervous. I was like, "Listen, I want to give some wiggle room because I don't want to get risked out of your practice." And she was like, "No." So then once the 42-week line was coming up, I told my husband, I was like, "I'm not going to ask for permission. I'm just going to do it." and I'm going to drink castor oil and get this going because I don't want her to say no. And then for me to risk out. And when everything was said and done, she was like, you should have told me. I would have said yes. Like you didn't have to like do it behind my, because I had admitted to her like moments after giving birth. I'm like, I'm sorry, Sydney, but I took castor oil. I didn't tell you.
Oh my God. I love you. Did you just Google it? How did you know how much to take?
I followed a lot of Mama Natural, Genevieve.
Yeah.
I had her like week by week, and I like watched YouTube videos, and I like read her book, and I felt like confident enough to try it by myself. And I also am like a big advocate for like body autonomy, right? Like you don't need anyone's permission. You don't need any, like this is your body, this is your birth. Like you get to make your choices. And so I kind of convinced myself, I'm like, do what you preach, Meg. Like it's your body, just make a decision. But looking back, I'm like, she even said to me, she was like, some people have really fast births on castor oil. You should like let me know the next time you're going to do that. And I was like, okay, sorry.
Just in case, Well, I'm going to give everybody the midwives brew since we're talking about it. It's a very important distinction. You can mix it with anything you want, but this is my favorite recipe that I got from the midwives here that I love in my area. But it's 2 tablespoons of castor oil. And every now and then I'll talk to someone and they'll take 2 ounces on accident. And I'm like, whoop. 2 ounces of castor oil is a lot of castor oil. So 2 tablespoons of castor oil, 2 tablespoons of almond butter, and like 1 cup of apricot nectar, mangoes, just something really fruity. And then if you're sober, you don't drink, don't add champagne, but something sparkly, like a champagne, a bubbly, like something like that. It can just kind of help you throw it back a little bit. So that's my midwives brew. When I was pregnant and I took castor oil, Meg, I just took it. It was like,
oh wow, you're a champ.
And then like afterwards, I think I ate like Chobani yogurt, and I was like, never again will I eat Chobani yogurt. It's just never gonna happen.
Girl, it's like motor oil. Yeah, I made a milkshake with mine. I got chocolate peanut butter milkshake, or chocolate peanut butter ice cream, and I made a milkshake with it. And it did taste like motor oil, but it also tasted like ice cream. So I didn't really fight the process.
Yeah. Okay. And did it worked pretty quickly? Like when did you start feeling contractions?
Yeah, I took it at 8:30 in the morning. I started contracting at 12:30 in the afternoon. So it was like 4 hours of wait time. And then I had a 4-hour labor, and it was my like best, smoothest, most amazing labor.
Okay, so now we're going to intersect Clementine and Theo's.
Yes,
because I brought everybody up right to like the birth, like how did the labor start and whatever. So will you just tell us like a little bit about Clementine's actual birth and then Theo's birth?
Yeah, so Clementine's birth was really awesome. The only thing that I think that like I didn't really understand exactly what transition and what like pushing and all these things were really going to feel like, because I didn't have an epidural with Clementine. So there was more fear and less peace in Clementine's birth than my second home birth, because there was a lot of like anticipation. So my birth with Clementine was great. My husband was an amazing birth support. I remember getting into the tub like probably right around transition time, and experiencing transition, like fully aware of my body, and looking up at my midwife and just saying out loud, like, I feel really scared right now. And she was like, that's okay. You're like, she said something along the lines of like, just like, let go. And I remember having this crazy contraction and leaning back, and I had fetal ejection reflex, which I didn't even know was a thing. And Clementine like shot out of my body. And I was so not expecting that to happen, because no one had ever talked to me about FER. And so I thought that like I was going to make a choice to push. I didn't realize that my uterus could make that choice for me. And so when she came shooting out of my body, like obviously I was happy to meet her. I was very, very shocked. And I just kept being like, but how did this happen? Because I never pushed. So I just kept asking everyone, and no one stopped and was like, you had FER. This is what your body, no one explained to me for a year. A year later, I was explaining the story, and someone was like, oh, you had FER. I had that too. And I was like, there's a thing like that. And then it took me down a whole different rabbit hole. But yeah, Clementine came out. It was a beautiful, it was a very, just empowering birth. I was like, I did it. I felt, I just felt really empowered. I had a little bit of a tear. They did like a running stitch, but it wasn't a very big tear, or it wasn't very deep. It was just a little bit long, but it wasn't very deep. So I tore a little bit with her. And she, man, she was my peace baby. She just latched and nursed and gained weight and was just was an amazing postpartum recovery with Clementine.
Oh, and she was she was born in the water.
Yes. Yep. She was born in the tub.
Okay. So when you say tub, do you mean like a birthing tub, like that your midwife set up in the middle of your living room? Okay. Because some people like mean a bathtub at their house, but like one of those beautiful circular birth tubs that like you and your husband could both fit in, and plenty of room. Oh, I love it. Did you do the delay, like where you bring her to the surface delayed, or were you like, I'm ready to meet you right now?
Yeah, my husband was one who caught her. So he caught her and brought her up to my
Oh.
chest. And it was just surreal. It was,
Mm.
she just came right up there and was just like Flora, like crying and just ready to go. Just instant. It was just sheer joy.
Yeah. Now you had said you didn't encapsulate with your first and second, right? But you did
Yeah. So we did.
encapsulate with Theo. Yeah. Did you
Mhm.
do anything special with that placenta? Or like, what happens to the placenta in home birth? All my home birth clients, I think, bury it in the garden or ingest it. So what did you do with Clementines, or did your
I
midwife
don't
take
even.
it?
Yeah, I just remember she put it in a brownie pan, and I remember thinking that is surreal to see an organ in something that I bake with. But yeah, I guess she just took it and disposed of it in her own way. But
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't do anything with clementines either. Once again, it was more of like a budget thing for
Yeah.
the second time around. But yeah,
Yeah. Did you get someone to do it for Theo's, like, for free? Or did you budget for it?
no, we had a budget for Theo's, and it was actually really sweet because whoever did my placenta, like, was able to accurately guess Theo's weight and
Ooh,
based off
wow.
of, I guess, the veins in it.
Yeah.
And she was like, your placenta looks so healthy. She was like, he must have been at least 10 pounds. And I was like, yeah, he was. How'd you know?
Wait. No way.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my goodness. Okay. Will you share just a little bit of Theo's birth story then?
Oh yeah. Theo's birth is my favorite to share about because I had read this book, Supernatural Childbirth, 3 times, which it talks a lot about how there's some women who can have these supernatural births where they don't experience pain. And I was just like, that is BS because I read this book and I did all of this stuff. I did all the hypnobirthing, I did everything. And I was in so much, I would consider my first 2 births very painful. But I think that a lot of it was like mental, right? So like with Flora's, everything was new. With Clementine, everything felt new. It felt like a first birth in some ways because I'd never experienced birth like that. So with Theo, I just felt so prepared and so empowered that I felt like I was able to just relax and train my mind to just really embrace the contractions and to not tense up. And I felt like I wouldn't say it was completely pain free, but it was very close. Like I would say that not until I hit transition did I really feel super uncomfortable. And that was amazing. So I remember getting no one thought that I was hitting transition and they were trying to delay me getting into the tub. But like I knew when I was hitting transition with Theo, like I just think that no one else really knew because I wasn't probably showing signs. And I got into the tub with Theo when I hit transition, and I had probably 4 really powerful contractions. And I love looking at these birth pictures too, like between my first and my second home birth, because with Clementine, you could see it on my face. I was like, my eyebrows were intense, like my jaw was tight, everything was just like I just was holding on. But with Theo, I looked like I was sleeping in all my pictures. Like my eyes were closed and my face was relaxed. And even one when he was crowning, there's a picture of me like this. And like I was like huge smile on my face. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because I just knew it was happening. I was like, oh, I felt this huge surge and I felt this kind of fear set in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have him soon. This is what happened with Clementine. And same thing, I felt this huge like contraction and I leaned back and his head was out. Like my body just like pushed his head out. And
Mhm.
I was like, okay, it's happening again. This is the FER thing I heard about. Like, this is like my body's gonna do it. His head's out and I look at my midwife and she looks at me and I was like, do you want me to try to push? Because at this point, like I said, like I never really had to. And she's like, well, why don't you just like wait for the next contraction and see what happens? And so the next contraction I did push a little bit, but like, not a lot. My body kind of did it for me. And yeah, the shoulders came out and he came out and like, he was so chunky. Like okay, technically he was only 9 pounds and 12 ounces. But that's because she didn't weigh him for like a solid hour and a half after he was born. And he had like peed and pooped and everything by that point. So I like to say he was my 10-pound baby, but he wasn't technically a 10-pound baby.
Oh, he's a 10-pound baby. All right. So welcome to the 10-pound club. And, often at 42 weeks, they're going to be 9 and 10 pounds, because they just had that opportunity to chunk up. So, I have really loved hearing all of your stories, Meg. This has been really fun.
Thank you.
I learned a lot too. I love home birth. I love learning about it. I love why people find their way to home birth, and the fetal ejection reflex is so cool. And I wanted to tell the audience before we jump off, I actually have only had 2 clients in my whole career have the fetal ejection reflex with an epidural. And one of them, she just was with an epidural and she was sleeping, and she just, I went to roll her over. I essentially just opened her legs to kind of just change her position. And the baby just shot out. And I was like, oh shit, I'll guess here you go.
That is so amazing. Dream come true, right?
Yeah. I mean, she was really kind of freaked out because it scared her, because she was basically sleeping and then was holding a baby in her arms and was like, wait, I didn't even push. And I'm like, I know, it's called a fetal ejection reflex. And then I had one other client that experienced it with an epidural, but many clients that experience it when they're unmedicated. It's possible if you have a light epidural, I will say, that you may have the fetal reflex. And yesterday, even I had a client who had, she was 9.75 centimeters, meaning there's an anterior lip on the front part of her cervix. And I told her, I'm trained in spinning babies. We can do all these things. You're comfortable with an epidural, but if we do nothing, your body will resolve the cervix all on its own, And she was like, okay, let's do nothing. She was like, I'm tired. Let's do nothing. And maybe 30 minutes later, she was like, I think I feel my vagina pushing. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's a reflex. It's really happening. So, birth's so cool, isn't it, Meg?
It is. Yeah, it is so cool. And I just want to say that a lot of people probably feel a little freaked out when I say that I had a 10-pound baby, but I just want to reassure anyone who has big babies out there. That was my easiest, least painful, least tearing birth. It was my third. But people are like, oh my gosh, that must have been awful. I'm like, no, he came out. I had I had such a teeny tiny scar tear that I almost didn't even need stitches. And yeah, he was my easiest. So I just always tell people that. I'm like, don't be freaked out if you're measuring big. It does not mean that you're just going to have a harder labor and a harder delivery just because your baby's big.
Yeah. And I absolutely believe God, the God of my understanding, creates a baby and grows that baby to be the perfect size for the person carrying that baby. I also had a 10.5 pound baby and easily birthed him. Easily, air quote, I 4.5 hours of pushing, but I mean, easily birthed him, right? Yeah, let's not be intimidated by these big, amazing, chunky babies. They'll slide right out if you're in a relaxed state and you relax your pelvic floor and you're not afraid. It's so important. So before we jump off, Meg, again, you guys, it's Flourishing Motherhood and then TikTok Flourishing Mother. If you were going to a baby shower today or you were making a registry, what's the one thing, the one product or the one gift that you would want to receive or that you would give that you want to make sure listeners know about?
There is this mat on Amazon. It's called Saunders mat. And I know there are some bigger name brands that have these giant leather mats that are $350 and just totally unattainable for people like me. But this mat is $100 and the big one, the biggest one they have. And it is I wish I would have gotten this for my first baby because I use it everywhere. Like if you're an outdoorsy mom and you go on picnics, you go to the beach, you go to lakes, you like to, lay out in your backyard. Like this mat is so amazing because nothing can get through it. It's completely waterproof. It's really cute looking. It's $100. And I I got mine 3 years ago and I pretty much use it on a weekly basis. And I wish that I would have had it with my first baby because it makes going out and doing things with a crawler or with a newborn like so easy.
Awesome. Do you have an affiliate link by any chance?
I do. Yes. I have this linked. If you go to my Instagram or TikTok on my bio, I have my Amazon storefront and I think I have a postpartum one and it has this and my runner up, which is the Even Flow wagon. That wagon is so amazing. And I think that every mom should get that instead of a stroller.
Okay.
Those two are on there.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and link that link in the show notes of this episode, you guys. So if you're listening and you don't have time to write any of this down, just know later you can come back to the episode and you can link in the show notes. Or if you can remember Meg with Flourishing Motherhood, you can go find that link in her bio. So,
yes.
Meg, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on your beautiful babies. And please thank your husband for his service in the Navy.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Thank you for interviewing me. This was awesome. I'm so glad that women have resources like you to listen to and prepare for.
Yeah, me too. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to Birth Story. My goal is you will walk away from each episode with a clear picture of how labor and delivery might go, and that you will feel empowered by the end of your pregnancy to speak up, plan and prepare for the birth you want, no matter what that looks like.